Sup, guys? It's Toad back with you. As always, it is now Friday, February 28th, last day of February, not a leap year. I'm leaping up and down with joy after last night, closing off a pretty good stretch of about a week or so with a huge hot streak, then a little bit of a lull in the middle of the week. And last night, 5-0, baby. Just a huge night for me last night. It puts me at a new peak over the last 3 years, basically, since I've started tracking everything on Action Network, which I don't know if I'm going to continue doing it. Like I said, I've been thinking about maybe just starting to track everything on Picket instead, but Action Network, since I've been doing it since the start of 2023, I think, or 2022, whatever it is, I'm at a new, maximum profit, so happy about that. We're going to continue it. I've locked in a winning February now, guaranteed a winning February. I got 3 plays tonight, and even if I go 0-3, I'm still going to win in February. But hopefully it's not an 0-3. I want to keep winning, baby. And that's even more miraculous, I guess, because the start of February was really bad. So the first couple of days, it was like one of the worst starts to a month I've ever had. And to finish a month this way, pretty awesome. Closed January really nicely as well with one of my best weeks that I've ever had. So it's going well. I'm up on the year, needless to say. It's been going well. Let's have it continue, man. Last night, just to recap it quickly, we had Wright State was a winner in the earlier college basketball game. It was a close game. I didn't really see what happened in the game, but they did wind up winning. And they covered if you laid the point spread as well. Then we had NBA. Charlotte Hornets, they lost, but they did cover. I think maybe they only covered by a half point on that 13.5, so hopefully people did get the best number on that, but that was a cover for me. New Orleans Pelicans won outright. They were dominating the early portions of that game, just out to a huge lead. Then they actually blew the whole lead, and they were losing by, I think, as much as 7. So it was still, I believe, a wire-to-wire cover for them, but it got a little bit close to them not covering. As they were a half point away from not covering, they completely turned it around again, closed the game, winning the game. So we'll talk about New Orleans Phoenix again shortly because they're playing again tonight. And then we had the Utah Hockey Club, easy win, 6-1, just... Yeah, I mean, I didn't even mention Minnesota's goaltending situation going into that game, which I thought probably had something to do with why the line kept moving up on Utah. It got to the point where Utah was like a minus 170 favorite. So even laying the puck line would have been good for you. You would have won that one. They won 6-1. And yeah, because of the goaltender situation, I think that partially had to do with why that line moved up, because Gustafsson didn't play last night for Minnesota, and they had Fleury in net, even though he is a very experienced goalie. He is the lesser of their goalies, and he did not have a great night. So that was, I mean, not like I did. That was a nice night. That was a good win, easy win, no sweat win in Utah. And then Loyola Marymount covered in the late college game as well. As that game basically played out like I expected. Extremely low-scoring game. Neither team even got to 60. So, I mean, if you thought the game was going to go that way, it made sense to take the 13.5-point underdog, because neither team is going to be able to get margin, although I believe St. Mary's did have a double-digit lead at one point in the game, but it did not stick, and they only won by 3. So Loyola Marymount pretty easily wound up covering that one in the end. So 5-0, baby. Let's move on to today. Some interesting stuff going on in college basketball. It is a Friday, so you got a lot of Ivies going on. A couple of the games are 5 p.m. Eastern for whatever reason. We're not into the conference tournaments quite yet, but there are some conference tournament implications going on today. I'm going to skip most of these games, not even really worth talking about, in my opinion. I don't really see any angles in the Ivies tonight. We got some MAC games going on where I would say that maybe you could find a slight lean on Eastern Michigan in this game against Central Michigan. Central Michigan already beat Eastern Michigan at home by 19 points. They're on a little bit of a roll right now, but they are having to go out on the road. But then again, Central Michigan did almost lose to Buffalo in their last game. Buffalo's no good, so Central Michigan was a 13.5-point favorite, so they might refocus themselves for that reason. But then again, they're facing Ball State next, and Ball State, that's actually a road revenge game for Central Michigan, so they might actually overlook Eastern Michigan a little bit towards Ball State, because Ball State actually beat them. Eastern Michigan's sitting right at 500, probably would like to get the win. It's kind of this mental thing where you don't want to fall below 500. And Eastern Michigan just lost to a not great Bowling Green team, probably as a home favorite, I would assume, in that one. So it would be Eastern Michigan or pass in that game for me, but that's not a play. Central Michigan's down from 3 with reduced juice to 2.5. We got some of these MAC games going on that I'm not sure that they're quite that interesting, really. VCU's playing Davidson. VCU laying a huge amount of points. I only bring it up because VCU, they're just completely on a roll right now. I was actually going to say they're coming off that win over George Mason, which was a huge win, but that's not the case. They went out on the road and they beat Richmond after that, and it's a good thing I didn't play Richmond in that game in the potential VCU letdown spot, because VCU still covered that game, I think. Richmond just not a very good team. Now VCU's hosting Davidson. They do have Duquesne and Dayton. They got the 3Ds all in a row, and Duquesne, Dayton, well, at least Dayton is a bigger game. I don't know about Duquesne, but whatever. I'm not going to play that game. Let's see. Merrimack, I briefly considered maybe fading Merrimack here, as they just beat Iona. That's a pretty decent win, even though Iona doesn't have a great record this year. Iona, I mean, they are still up above 500 in the conference standings. So that's a decent win for Merrimack. Now they have to face Rider, who I believe they already beat. Yeah, they beat them by 2 on the road, so it's road revenge for Rider. Merrimack's got Quinnipiac and Marist up to finish the season, and they lost to both of them in the first matchups, I think. So both of those games are not only big games against the teams sitting atop the conference, but they're both revenge games for Merrimack. So I would look to play Rider in the road revenge spot here, man. I did take Rider in one of these recent games and got the outright win, which I think was probably against Iona, whatever it was. I got the win there. Rider since then hasn't even won a game. I played 2 of them on the road, though, but they did get blasted at home as well. My one hesitation here would be that they're playing 4 road games in 5 games, so that's fairly difficult to do when you're bouncing kind of all around, bouncing up and down the East Coast, basically. So little bit of hesitation for that reason. Still looks like the situational spot would be a play on Rider, plus the 9 points there. Merrimack sitting in a 9-point favorite with like no movement on that yet. Next up, Old Dominion and Coastal Carolina. This is a weird situation, man, where this is the Sun Belt, and they're playing their last regular season games. And the Sun Belt, I believe the way that their tournament is set up, I might be wrong about this, but I think the way their tournament is set up is that every team gets in except for the bottom team, which is just kind of brutal. It's like only that one team gets left out of the conference tournament, and they all still have a shot to play in the tournament, although usually you're going to get one of the top half is going to wind up winning the conference and getting into the NCAA tournament. So it's not going to be Coastal or UL Monroe, but Coastal, I believe it sets up kind of a unique situation here where both of these teams are playing tonight, and UL Monroe is playing Arkansas State, so they're likely going to lose the game. So if UL Monroe loses, Coastal, regardless of what they do, is going to wind up ahead of UL Monroe, I believe, because they're already ahead of them. So if they both lose, that wouldn't change. But Coastal could also, I believe, guarantee that they get the last spot in the Sun Belt tournament with a win. Actually, let me just make sure that the Sun Belt is actually 13 teams. I just got to make sure real quick here. I believe that is the case, though. I'm looking right now. We got, oh no, I'm wrong. 14 seeds get in. Never mind what I'm about to say. Never mind. So they do all get in, but I did see some movement on the Coastal side for whatever reason. It is a revenge spot for them against Old Dominion after having lost at Old Dominion by 22 points. So, and they did win their previous game, and it is senior night for them at the very least. But I was thinking, if it's a situation where basically either they win or UL Monroe loses and they get into the tournament, then that would be an extra motivator, but it's not. They're both getting into the Sun Belt tournament, so never mind. I was thinking that is brutal if you leave the one team out. I mean, every conference is different. There are some teams that leave like the bottom 2 or 3 teams out or whatever. Anyway, forget about that. I thought it was going to be an interesting talking point. It isn't. We'll go to my actual play, which is Purdue -5. I'm going to lay the points with Purdue in this one. It might be 5.5 right now. I don't think there's too much of a difference, you would hope, between those two numbers. The big games tonight are all like later, 8 p.m. or later. Purdue actually looks like they're down from 5.5 to 5. So with juice, some kind of early movement coming in against Purdue, but I think it's a spot to fade UCLA here, man. UCLA is coming off Mick Cronin's 500th career coaching win. So you got to think that they celebrated a bit after that win, especially when it was a delayed celebration after they flew his father out, which was this ridiculous situation where they were just assuming they were going to beat Minnesota, and then they didn't, and they lost as a big favorite. So you had to wait until the next game where they beat Ohio State. It was a pretty close game, pretty decent win against a tournament team, although obviously Purdue is a bigger game. But that was a high, man. And if Mick Cronin's father was still there, that's a big emotional win. For the team, for the coach, even if the coach is calling his players delusional and bashing them constantly in post-game press conferences, you got to think that was a big celebration for UCLA, man. And now they have to come off of that, and they have to fly to an unfamiliar location because UCLA is new to this conference. And Purdue, they got one of the strongest home courts in college basketball, man. I know they haven't been playing well recently, but the Mackey Center, pretty difficult place to play. And if you're not familiar with it and you don't usually play there, which is the case for UCLA, I think it's going to be a little bit worse, too. So UCLA having to fly, change time zones, although at least for them it's a night game, so it won't matter as much. It won't be, really early as far as their biological clock is concerned, so that's a little bit less bad. But still, it's an unfamiliar venue. They're coming off that big emotional win. And I think Purdue is going to be kind of pissed off, man. I mean, both of these teams at this point, they're both going to make the tournament, so there's not really much going on there. Purdue has fallen behind UCLA in the Big Ten standings, so try to give Purdue a little bit of an extra chip on their shoulder. This is our conference, guys. You guys are new. Fuck you. Get back behind us, that type of thing. So I think Purdue might have a little bit extra motivation for that reason. And again, I don't think playing for seeding in the Big Ten tournament is really a huge motivating factor in these games for these teams. But I think what is what I just said, but also Purdue, they're on a string of 4 straight losses, man. And yeah, 3 of them were to pretty good teams: Michigan, Wisconsin, Michigan State. I mean, it even looks like Indiana's going to make the tournament at this point, and I have them in my bracketology now. If you saw my most recent update, even though I was saying they're going to be completely out, but I think they're going to be in, and that's just ridiculous. Purdue loses to them by double digits. I mean, Purdue losing 3 straight games, almost all of them by double digits, by 9 or more, and having lost to Michigan the game before that, and having lost the last time they played on this floor to Wisconsin. Pretty ugly loss by 10 to Wisconsin. But Purdue, their strong home court remains, man. I mean, out of these 4 games, 3 of them are on the road, so they're still looking pretty good at home, man. They've lost 2 games at home recently, but still, I think the fact that they lost their last game on this floor is also going to be an extra motivator. As I always say, if you're a college team, you're returning home from a bit of a road trip where you didn't do well on that road trip, you lost pretty ugly, and you're returning home to your home floor where you also lost your last game on this home floor, you have a ton of motivating factors here. So I expect a very focused effort from Purdue here. Yes, it is going to be a slow-paced game because both teams do play slow. Purdue is actually the better offensive team, and UCLA is the better defensive team. So why am I doing this when the better defense is getting points and it's going to be a slower-paced game? Well, I do think Purdue might be able to speed the game up a little bit because UCLA likes to play so slow that they actually play almost significantly slower than even Purdue does. So Purdue might actually try to get this game a little bit faster and use their efficient offensive attack to score some points here, so that may be the case. So that is more conducive to Purdue being able to cover a number like this just because they do have the better offense and they do want to play a little bit faster, and I like the spot for Purdue. So that is what we're going to be doing there. And Purdue, obviously, a lot less travel, too, as they're just coming back from Indiana, which is an in-state game there. So that's what we're looking for there. Iowa's playing in Northwestern on FS1 at 9 p.m. I mean, this is the other Big Ten game. This is a lot less interesting of a game. Northwestern sitting at a 4.5-point favorite. I don't know what I would want to do with this game, man. Iowa coming off getting drilled by Illinois. I mean, that was Illinois' kind of get-right spot there after they were really sliding. I think they were coming off that embarrassing loss to Duke. So Illinois turned it around and just destroyed Iowa. This Iowa team, they're pretty much in disarray right now. I mean, now they're facing a second straight road game, although they're staying in the Chicago area, and they're coming off a 20-point loss. They do also have Michigan State up next in their final home game, which normally I would say is a look ahead. But Iowa, you got to think they're going to try to be focused off of that bad performance against Illinois, but I don't even know, man, because this Iowa team, they just haven't showed up in games where they should have won. I think one of their like key players just left the team or something. I don't know what's going on with this Iowa program. Whatever it is, it's not good. So I hesitate to want to just even touch Iowa games at this point. Northwestern is coming off 2 straight wins. One was that ridiculous upset win. Just annihilation of Ohio State. I don't know how that even happened. Then they turn around and they won again on the road by double digits against Minnesota. So does the letdown for Northwestern come here? Because they do have their final home game next against UCLA and then Maryland to finish the season. It's possible. This Iowa team looking so bad, and Northwestern may have this delayed kind of letdown from that Ohio State win. So it is possible that that is the case. Maybe that would give me a slight lean to the Iowa side, but with that program really being a question mark right now, I don't want to do that. And then Kent State and Akron is a big game on ESPN2. This is a big MAC game. Kent State moving up the rankings and kind of establishing themselves as really at this point they might be the second best team in the MAC. Akron, of course, is the best team in the MAC. But this is road revenge for Kent State. Akron already went to Kent State and beat them by 14 points. Kent State likes to play defense, and they like to slow the game down, man. Akron is the better offensive team. They like to play fast. I don't think Akron is really that bad defensively either, but they're the better offensive team, and they're faster. And they were able to speed the game up at Kent State. So it doesn't seem like there'd be much of a reason why they wouldn't be able to speed the game up here at home as well. They did beat Ball State to bounce back from that loss to Ohio, which is Akron's first loss of the season. I still think they were a bit hungover. I mean, they didn't cover at Ball State, although they still got the win. I mean, they are the better team. Now returning home, I mean, I could see this going both ways, man. Both teams are going to want to show up for this. It's a big game. Kent State does have road revenge. Akron at this point has a little bit of padding above both Kent State and Miami, Ohio, as far as the 1 seed is concerned in the MAC. I think it is still possible that Akron does lose that position, but we did have a couple of teams clinch last night, by the way, clinch the regular season conference titles. I think SEMO did in the Ohio Valley. So when you see teams that clinch their conferences like that, a lot of times you want to go against them in their next conference game if they have another one. So that's something to look to. But tonight, I don't think we have any teams that are coming off of that situation, but some teams did it last night, which I forget what some of the other teams were. Maybe I should look real briefly. I think SEMO was definitely one of them. St. Mary's was one of them, I believe, because they got the win, even though they didn't cover. I don't really know about the other teams here, but I think it was mostly just those two. Anyway, yeah, whatever the case may be. Akron, yeah, I mean, I could see them being in a focus spot here and Kent State being in a focus spot. And then when that happens, sometimes you want to defer to the better team, although Akron's down from 4.5 to 4. So the line movement does look like it's going against Akron. And you do have the better defense in Kent State getting points in the road revenge spot. So I do see arguments for the Kent State side. I see some arguments for Akron as well, though maybe the arguments for Kent State actually might be a little bit stronger. And maybe they have a little bit extra motivation because they are behind Akron in the standings. Nevada and UNLV, I mean, this is the Mountain West matchup to kind of finish the slate here in the degenerate special at 11 p.m. Eastern, man. Don't chase. I would say if you're losing on the night, just let it go, man. Don't force something if you don't have an angle. This is on Fox Sports 1. This is the big Nevada rivalry game. Nevada already won the first game at home, only by 6. So it is revenge for UNLV. And Nevada, after that loss to Boise, close, tough game, they had a nice bounce back and beat Wyoming easily. I mean, Wyoming's not good, but you might have expected Nevada to kind of be hung over in that game, and they weren't. So they got the win. Now they have to go to Las Vegas. And up next, though, Nevada has a huge game, which is their final home game, senior night against New Mexico, who's still atop this conference. So that is a big game. This is revenge for UNLV, although UNLV is actually ahead of Nevada in the standings. That may give Nevada a little bit of reason to show up in this game as well. UNLV is coming off a win over San Jose State, which is whatever. I mean, they've made this nice run of 4 wins in 5 games, but they've been beating up on all the worst teams in the conference, Wyoming, Air Force, Fresno, only winning that game by 1 point at Fresno, and then losing to Colorado State is better than those teams, and then beating San Jose State. So UNLV is able to beat the worst teams in the conference. Now they got to step up and play Nevada. They do have big games up next, too, against San Diego State and New Mexico. UNLV, I think, usually considers themselves to be the little brother, though, so they usually play with a lot of motivation against Nevada. And because it's revenge, probably you expect UNLV to be the slightly more motivated team in this spot. But Nevada is up from 1 with juice to 1.5. So a little bit of line movement on the Nevada side. They are the better team, and they are laying the points on the road. And maybe Nevada will show up in this game, man, just because they are behind UNLV and they consider themselves to be the bigger brother. And it's like, you can't be ahead of us in the standings in the conference, little bro. So both teams likely are going to show up in that game. And then if that is the case, maybe you do want to defer to looking towards the better team, which is Nevada, despite being below UNLV in the standings. Let's go over to NHL. I'm not playing any of these games. There are 3 games in the NHL. They're actually all pretty decent matchups here. Toronto is going to the New York Rangers. Toronto just beat my Boston Bruins, overcoming a 3-0 deficit, as I lamented yesterday, I believe. Boston also had retaken the lead, and then the Leafs tied it in the final minute and then won in overtime. Brutal for Bruins fans right now. This Bruins team, they're never going to win again. But now Toronto's going to the Rangers. The Rangers are starting to play a little bit better hockey here. So this is a good matchup, man. The Rangers, they're coming off a couple straight wins, although over Pittsburgh and the Islanders, not that impressive. They're technically returning home, but all they did was go to Buffalo, Pittsburgh, and the Islanders. So they stayed pretty much in the area, and their last game was basically in New York City still. So not a lot of travel for the Rangers, even though they are returning home from a road trip. Toronto up from -114 to -118. They are public, 74% of tickets, 99% of the cash on them. I'm not sure that I agree with that cash percentage and that line movement there. I think Toronto's in the somewhat worse spot just because they're coming off that furious comeback in that game against the Bruins, even though at this point beating the Bruins is not really a big deal. It's not like a type of win that's going to hang you over, but still, I don't know, man. They are playing a 3rd straight road game. Both teams have actually had the last 2 days off, I believe, too. Rangers with no travel at all. Travel with 2 days off from Boston to New York isn't a big deal either, so it's going to come down to which team is a little bit more motivated in that game. Maybe it is the Rangers. Also because the Rangers have been really underperforming what their expectations were this year, and Toronto's kind of exceeding theirs. So might see a little bit of regression from that standpoint. The Kings are at Dallas. This might be where I have the strongest lean, as the Kings lost to Vancouver, and I played Vancouver in that game, man. My hockey's starting to get on track again a little bit with, I believe, 2 straight wins in hockey for me now. The Kings losing that game off of that big win over Vegas with this game against Dallas up next. I told you that was a sandwich spot. Vancouver got it done for us, or for me, for anybody that followed me on that one. The Kings did try to make the comeback in that game. They were down 2-0 and they tied it. And then luckily for us, Vancouver still won in overtime. Rittich was in net there for the Kings. You're probably going to get Kemper back in net here, who is, I believe, the better of their 2 goalies and kind of their starting goalie, the guy that gets more of their starts. So he'll be back in net for this. So you should get the better goaltender for the Kings, and the Kings being in a bounce-back spot, and they're starting a road trip. However, they did just beat Dallas in a shootout on February 7th, so it is a quick revenge spot for Dallas. That would give me a little bit of hesitation because aside from that, the situation does look better for the Kings. Being in a bounce-back spot and starting a road trip, usually your focus to start a road trip, man. You want to get that road trip off on the right foot. Dallas, though, they're coming off a loss as well, and that's actually probably maybe even an uglier loss, losing to the Blue Jackets. Blue Jackets have been playing pretty well, though their defense is just miserable. The Blue Jackets are basically all offense, but they're playing surprisingly well right now, so maybe that's not as embarrassing a loss as you might think it is, but still, probably you're going to see the Dallas want to bounce back from that. But Dallas is returning home from a road trip, man, and they've been on the road trip since coming out of the All-Star break, so it's not the longest road trip. I think it was these 3 games from New Jersey onward. So they went up to the New York City area, then to Columbus, and now they're coming back home. But they have been away for almost a week, so it is still a return home spot where you might get a little bit distracted. But the fact that it is the Kings, and the Kings did just beat Dallas, Kings are a good team, that may still mean that Dallas is going to show up focused in this game. So this is a hard game to read. It's not a play for me. I would probably still slightly lean to the Kings, which is where this money line has moved. Dallas down from -145 to -131. 62% of tickets, 92% of the cash, though. So the cash percentage is in conflict with where the line looks like it's moved. So I don't know what to think about that. And then Minnesota's at Colorado. Colorado up from minus 215 to minus 240, 67% of tickets, 98% of the cash. As I keep saying, Minnesota, their record looks good, but they're not as good as their record looks. And the odds makers are, again, the line is telling you, the lines makers, they're telling you Colorado is the significantly better team, as they're a big favorite here. And I think that's even with Minnesota probably having Gustafsson back in net here. That still is the case, which is just kind of crazy. Minnesota is coming off that really hideous loss last night to Utah, though, and I pointed out it was a bad spot because Minnesota had lost that tough game to Detroit in the zigzag. Detroit playing pretty good hockey. They had to turn around, go into elevation, face Utah with Colorado coming up in the next night. So I think they overlooked the Utah game. They did have their backup goalie in Fleury. It'll be Gustafsson back in net tonight. It might be a spot where Minnesota does show up focused again for this one. Colorado's coming up blowing out the Rangers, ending their 2-game loss streak because they had lost both games coming out of the All-Star break, I believe. So Colorado did end that losing streak. They bounced back, but they did it in such a way where they destroyed New Jersey that maybe they're going to be feeling a little bit even too high on themselves here. And I don't know who their goalie is going to be in this game. They've had one day off. Blackwood is definitely the better goalie. Maybe he'll play a third game in a row. If it's Wedgwood, it's a little bit of a downgrade for Colorado. But with Colorado being this big a favorite, it is probably going to be Blackwood. And yeah, Minnesota, like I said, even though they are overrated, the situation I think might set up a little bit better for Minnesota. So it might make sense to start looking towards Minnesota puck line or something. I don't know. So actually, I'm kind of disagreeing with all of the where the cash percentages are in all three of those games here, which it's probably why I'm not playing any of those games. None of those games are strong reads. Let's go to the NBA. We got a decent Friday NBA card here, man. I mean, Denver at Detroit, that's going to be a good one. Detroit playing really well right now. They just beat my Boston Celtics, but I told you it was a bad spot for the Celtics. Celtics were in a back-to-back, coming off having to win at Toronto, and Celtics had a huge game against Cleveland on deck, which is tonight. So Detroit did catch them in a good spot, but still, Detroit, you just beat Boston by 20 points, man. So you might be feeling real good about yourselves right now, even though you're not going to overlook the Denver Nuggets, but I think this might be the spot where it finally catches up to Detroit. I don't know if they can continue that for 2 games in a row like that. Denver, yeah, they are on a road trip here, but they are coming off a pretty ugly loss to Milwaukee. So a little bit more of a bounce back spot for Detroit in this game, or for Denver, I would say, in this game. But they are playing on a back-to-back, although they did have 2 days off before that, so maybe it doesn't matter as much that it's a back-to-back. But they do have Boston up next as well. But if you force me to lean in this game, I'd probably lean to the Nuggets slightly. The line is flipped from the Pistons being a 3.5-point dog to a 2-point favorite. I don't understand why, because the Nuggets are the better team, but I don't know if that means somebody's out for the Nuggets in this game. I looked at the injury report here on ESPN at least, and I didn't really see anything that was really of note. So I don't know. It doesn't totally make sense to me what's going on there with that line. 68% of tickets, 72% of the cash on the Nuggets. Cash percentage on the Nuggets. I would agree with the Nuggets side, and that would very slightly, I would say, in that game. Cleveland is at Boston, of course, and this is the big ESPN game. This is the type of game where you want to be wearing your lucky green underwear, man, but mine is in the wash, so instead I am wearing Cleveland-colored red underwear. TMI, probably, or maybe not. And I'm doing that just so the Cleveland color has to be up against my ass all day. So that's the way I'm doing it, and I'm wearing green otherwise, all right? So let's go green. Let's bleed green. Go Celtics in this game. This is obviously a bounce-back spot for the Celtics, man. And they're coming off a couple of games where they didn't really play that well. I mean, yeah, they beat Toronto. They're on a nice hot streak. They got killed by Detroit in their last game, though, and I think that game, again, it's a little bit misleading. It was a game where I don't think the Celtics are paying that much attention to it. Jaylen Brown rested in the game, and the Celtics actually rested Porzingis, and I think they might have rested 2 guys in this game against Toronto. Porzingis and Holiday, I believe, both rested against Toronto. So you have a Celtics team where you got to assume they're going to play their full lineup in this game against Cleveland because it's a huge game. So you'll probably have the Celtics full lineup in this game, and they'll be rested. And it's not, I don't consider it to be like an injured player theory type of spot where guys miss like 1 game. I mean, they still are used to playing, man. It's really just a rest situation, so it doesn't really affect the chemistry or anything like that. Celtics, very deep team where they do that a lot and move pieces in and out, but you should get a bit more of the rested Celtics team in this game, man, and having their full arsenal of players, I would imagine, in this game. So that's good for the Celtics. I think the Celtics are going to be playing with a little bit more of a chip on their shoulder. They do have Brown and Holiday listed as game time decisions, but I think they were really just having, I think their absences were due to rest. I do expect them to play in this game, even though the line is actually a little bit cheap on the Celtics. So I don't know if the odds makers are thinking maybe one of those guys isn't going to play, but even with one of those guys out, I don't know that the line would move that much because the Celtics are so deep. So I don't know, but the Celtics, they're behind Cleveland in the standings, though. So that's the thing. That might mean the Celtics are going to play with a little bit more of a chip on their shoulder because they're behind Cleveland, man. And the Celtics obviously want to try to redeem themselves or try to change that if they can, right? Because they don't want. I mean, the Celtics really ideally would want the 1 seed, so they continue to have home court advantage. Although, do they have home court advantage? The Celtics actually are not good at home. They're actually better on the road. They're 18-10 at home, but they do play better against the better teams at home, though. When you have a game where the Celtics are going to be focused, they're going to show up and give you a good game, and that is going to be the case here. They should put in a good performance here. The games that they lose at home are games where they're like double-digit favorites and they just think they can easily win the game or they just completely overlook that team. They lose way too many of those games. That's the way the Celtics have been doing it for whatever reason. They're definitely a little bit worse than they were last year. Cleveland, very, very good on the road, though. 21-6 on the road. Crazy. But all that being said, I do think I would lean to the Celtics in this game, though. I think you're getting a cheap line. It's down from 2.5 to 2 with juice, so some money looking like it's coming in against the Celtics. I don't know that I agree with that move. Again, for all those reasons, I actually think the Celtics are probably in the slightly more focused spot, even though both teams are going to be focused. Celtics, I believe, have the edge in the season matchup, 2-1. I believe the Celtics won the first game, lost the second game, and won the third game. And I believe the Celtics won at home, and then the other 2 games are both at Cleveland, and they split those games 1-1. I believe that's the case, so it is technically kind of a road revenge spot for Cleveland now because the Celtics, last time they played, I believe, beat Cleveland at Cleveland. Is that right? Yes, it is. So, and all the games have been close. Every game has been decided by 7 or fewer, so you might expect the same in this game too. But the Celtics, they were like a 4.5-point favorite in the first game at home, and what's changed to the point where now it's 2.5? Like, I mean, is Cleveland... Do we think they're better now than they were then? I mean, Cleveland already was off to a really hot start and had the best record in basketball. So I don't know, man. So again, looks like a cheap line for the Celtics. Celtics coming off an uglier loss. Cleveland just absolutely destroyed Orlando. Now they're flying up to Boston. So you beat anybody by 40 points, man. Even if you are coming into a game against Boston. And Cleveland beat the Knicks by almost 40 2 games prior to that. So Cleveland has just been wrecking teams. You might be feeling maybe a little bit too high on yourselves, man, even though it's not like they're going to overlook the Celtics. But I think if you're going to play this game, it would be the Celtics or pass, man. I don't want to be a homer or be biased, but I'll be rooting for them, obviously. Not a play for me. I considered fading the Brooklyn Nets because this game against Oklahoma City, man, this was a wild game where Oklahoma City was a 16.5-point favorite, and Brooklyn, this is at Brooklyn, and Brooklyn almost was able to get the game. Brooklyn was winning almost the entire game, and they're winning by double digits for huge stretches of this game, and then they completely fell silent later in the game and got overtaken and wound up losing the game. That's a brutal loss for the Nets, man. I mean, you put in a performance like that where you think you're going to beat the Thunder and you have the Thunder on the ropes and you lose the game and now you're just staying at home off of that. I don't think the spot is very good for Brooklyn, man. And Portland, they're coming up beating Washington. Like, who cares? Although they are on the road here. Let me see. Portland, are they facing like 3 games in 4 days or something? I don't know. Let me look. No, they've had 1 day off in between every game. They do have Cleveland up next. So maybe they overlook Brooklyn for that reason. But I don't know, man. Coming off a win over Washington, it's not like you're going to be feeling like too confident or too high on yourself. So I think Brooklyn is in the worst spot, but the line, the market indicators are heavily on the Brooklyn side, and I don't really understand why. Portland's down from 3-1, 50% of tickets on 82% of the cash coming in on the Nets. I don't agree with that one. I don't agree with the market reading that one. I just don't see how Brooklyn pulls themselves back up off the mat after that game against the Thunder. So I don't know, man. Although you do have a bunch of injuries, it looks like, on the side of the Blazers. Really, Grant, you got to make sure, I guess, probably make sure he's going to play in this game. I don't think my handicap would really change much, though, regardless. So I don't know, man. And Robert Williams, the third, former Celtic, I mean, he's been out for a while, I believe. So the fact that he's still out doesn't really have much of an impact. So I don't know, man. The Knicks are at Memphis. I mean, this is a big game as well. Knicks righted the ship after a couple losses to Cleveland and Boston, although those are the two top teams in the East. So can't really blame them for that. They righted the ship and beat that disarray of a Philadelphia team. Now they're going out on the road. Starting a road trip, you usually are focused. So I expect probably focus out of the Knicks coming into this one. Memphis is coming off that ridiculous barn burner of a game against Phoenix. So they do have, I think, extra rest coming off of that game. That was a crazy overtime game, man, scoring 151 points. So this game probably would be Knicks or pass for me in this game. The Grizzlies up from 2.5 to 3.5 with juice. I don't think I agree with that move either. I think I would probably take the points with the Knicks or pass on the game. And the Knicks, at the very least, you're getting a team that usually plays decent defense with getting the points here. You do have to make sure that the Knicks have their guys playing, though, which I think Anunoby did come back already. Josh Hart, KAT, both listed as game-time decisions. So you will have to see if those guys are actually going to play in this game or not. I don't know. I haven't really analyzed that one because I'm not playing it. I'm playing 2 of the last 3 games, though. One of them I am going to play the zigzag here with the Phoenix Suns. This is this quick turnaround time, man. And you're getting extra line value here. As the line was 7.5 last night. And what changed? Phoenix lost the game outright, and now all of a sudden it's 6.5 or 7. So you're getting slight line value on the Phoenix Suns this time. The line has dropped basically just because of what happened last night. And Phoenix is going to be the team that has all the adjustments to make that, man. They're still the better of these two teams. They're the team that lost last night as the favorite. So I think this is a zigzag spot, similar to what you do in the playoffs. I haven't played a lot of the regular season zigzag spots, but I think this is one where you do it, man. I played New Orleans last night. It was a bad spot for Phoenix. Phoenix was returning home from a road trip. They played badly. They lost the game. I tell you, when they return home from a road trip, man, a lot of times it's a distracted spot. You got to get back to home life. You have stuff to do. I think that's what happened there. They got caught. But then what happens is when a team returns home from a road trip and they don't play well in that first game, they tend to get shocked back into focus after that. Like, we should have won that game, man. What's wrong with us? And they tend to fix things and do way better in the next game. And that's, I think, what we're going to have here. So it's the zigzag plus that second game back home spot, both in favor of Phoenix here. And again, slight line value because of the zigzag spot. And for the Pelicans, that was a big upset win, man. And now they have to try to turn around and do it again. And if you just won that previous game, nothing went wrong for you in that game. So what do you have to fix? You have nothing to fix. So I think it's a much worse spot for New Orleans. They are playing 3 games in 4 days as well, with 2 of them being on the road at Phoenix. So a little bit worse of a travel spot for them as well. I would kind of think, just because it's 2 straight games in a road arena, whereas for Phoenix, it is their home arena, so they're more used to it at the very least. So for all those reasons, I like Phoenix. And New Orleans, everybody's making a big deal. Zion Williamson, I mean, he's more fit now. I told you, he's lost some weight. He got his first career triple-double last night, man. So that's another thing where might be a little bit of extra celebration on the part of New Orleans last night. That was a big game for them, big win. They know they're not going anywhere. So Phoenix is at least, I think, still playing like we're better than what this record indicates, man. Basically, that's, I think, what Phoenix is going to be saying. They are better than the record would tell you. So Phoenix is the play in that game. Phoenix, I don't know if they still have like hopes to make the playoffs or whatever. New Orleans certainly does not. So I do think Phoenix is going to be playing with a little bit extra motivation there. And then the other play is Utah plus 3.5. I don't like the spot from Minnesota in any shape or form, man. This is bad. Minnesota's coming off playing the Thunder in back-to-back games, like I mentioned. They actually played the Thunder going into the All-Star break. They've come out of the All-Star break, and they played a gauntlet of Houston, Oklahoma City twice, L.A., and now they're on a back-to-back, going from the Lakers up into elevation after that 2 tough games, man. Beating Oklahoma City in overtime and a massive comeback from Minnesota. They were, I believe, getting blown out of the building in that game, and they came all the way back and won. Then they had to turn around and play L.A. They did have 2 days off. Went out to L.A., and they lost the game. And this is a game where they played close as well. L.A. was blowing them out, and again, Minnesota came back. They're like the comeback kids. They came back and cut it to a 1-possession game late in the game, and it was still within 1 or 2 possessions in the final couple of minutes. big game for Minnesota. And now they're coming off of that after falling short of that Laker team, having to go into elevation and play Utah. How are they going to be focused on this? And they do have Phoenix up next, which is at least a bigger game than Utah. So this is a bad spot. And on top of all that, Anthony Edwards got teed up again. He has like 16 technicals now or something like that. And it's reaching the point where I believe the league is going to hand him out a 1-game suspension, I think, but it's not going to be in this game. So Edwards is going to play. If he was suspended, I don't know if I would handicap this game differently, maybe. But then also for Minnesota, you got Gobert and Randall potentially might both come back in this game. And if that happens, I like fading Minnesota too, because I think that's going to be a chemistry disruptor, especially Randall, who doesn't play good defense, and he would want to insert himself back into the starting lineup. When you have a key piece like that, especially one who doesn't play good defense, you're not used to playing with this guy. I mean, he hasn't even been on Minnesota. He's barely even played with Minnesota at all. Has he even played with them? Maybe early once they got him, because they've only had him this year and he's barely played. So I think that's really a chemistry disruptor. This team doesn't have chemistry with him. And if Gobert comes back, it becomes a reverse injured player theory, I think, because I don't think he's played recently either. So I think you're going to see chemistry issues if the personnel changes from Minnesota. Give me Utah in this game. The T-Wolves are down from 3.5 with juice to 2.5. So some line movement against the T-Wolves. So hopefully you can get 3.5. It was 3.5 not long ago because I was able to get it. But 57% of tickets, 97% of the cash on the T-Wolves. I don't know. But if you do think those guys are coming back from the T-Wolves, for the T-Wolves, the line might move back up a little bit. So we will see. But I think it's a terrible, terrible spot for the T-Wolves here. Back-to-back as well, if I didn't mention that. So they have no rest as well. In Utah, they do have rest. Utah's coming off losing at home. They've lost 2 straight games at home, so they're going to want to redeem themselves, man. One was coming off that big game over Houston where I played Utah in that game. Utah's been good to me when I played them this year, man. So hopefully that's the case as well. They won that game. I think they were in a letdown off of that, and then, I don't know, they just lost to Sacramento in the game after that. Bad 17-point loss at home. I think they're going to want to bounce back from that. Utah, at the very least, when good teams have come into their arena, they've played pretty competitively. And then ESPN has the Battle of LA after the Celtics-Cleveland. You got Clippers-Lakers. Clippers, I don't love the spot that they're in because they're technically returning home from a road trip here, man, even though this is a home game for the Lakers. The Clippers returning back to LA at the very least. So you've got to think that if they're back in LA, they're going to be getting stuff done at home while they're trying to prepare for this game. But of course, you're not going to be unfocused against the Lakers, especially when the Lakers beat the Clippers the last time they played. The Clippers had won the prior game. So now it's a little bit of revenge for the Clippers. The Lakers, though, they're in a back-to-back, and they've won against Minnesota, coming off big games against Denver, Dallas, Minnesota. They might consider this Clippers game to actually be a little bit lesser of a game than those games, whereas the Clippers might consider it to be a bigger game, and the Clippers are up from 1.5 to 4.5 as a road favorite. Lakers are a public home underdog, 76% of tickets, 63% of the cash, although with both teams being LA teams, you probably don't give the Lakers the full home court advantage here, but the odds makers are telling you that in this spot, whatever the personnel is in this game, the Clippers are the better team, and they're laying 4.5, and the public is coming in on the Lakers, and you usually do not want to look to a public underdog, man. So I would lean to the Clippers for all those reasons, even though they are returning home to their home city from a road trip. Got to look at the personnel, though, because this line is very strange. I don't know why the line is where it is, and I don't really see anything going on with the Lakers other than Hachimura might not play, but he's out, actually. Oh, no, he's out, but it says he's returning tonight, so I don't know. Who knows, man? So it doesn't look like there's really huge personnel issues in that game, so I don't know what the deal is with that and why it's lined that way, but when it looks like a gift, which people are thinking it's a gift getting the points of the Lakers, it's usually too good to be true, man. But my plays tonight, one more time. Purdue in college basketball, -5. NBA Phoenix, -6.5. Utah, +3.5 or +3. You can probably still get out there right now. I don't know. I don't know if you'd want to wait and see if Minnesota's getting guys back or not. But that's going to do it. Tower Gang Toad on Twitter. Patreon.com/Tower Gang to support the most offensive podcast out there. That's it for me. Happy Friday. Let's kick off the weekend right. Peace out, guys.